Hello everyone and welcome to this Octopia webinar where we are going to answer the question how to provide the best delivery experience for our customers. Feel free to comment in the chat and ask all of your questions. We will answer them at the end. I will now let our two speakers present themselves and introduce the topic.
Good morning, Ben.
Morning, Jerome. Morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this live session. Today, Benjamin Hamilton and myself, we will be introducing the concept of the last mile delivery experience and how important, I could say essential it is for the end customer. Actually, we'll be doing a little bit more than introducing, if not entering into the many details because it's a broad subject. We will at least share some key information to those already operating in marketplace, or maybe some of you willing to operate a marketplace in a near future. But maybe before we start with the presentation, let us introduce ourselves. So Ben, who are you and what is your role at Octopia?
Thanks, Jerome. Yeah, my name is Ben Hamilton. I'm a director on the fulfillment team here at Octopia. We'll come on to, over the course of the webinar, exactly what the word fulfillment means, but suffice it to say that I'm passionate about all things delivery, logistics, fulfillment, for whether it's for a marketplace or a vendor.
So whatever comes around the last mile delivery, we ask you and your team, and you are the expert at Octopia about all these subjects.
I'm always reluctant to say expert, but yeah, exactly. My team and I will handle all those subjects.
Excellent. And you said last mile delivery, but this is something that is really interesting. When we say last mile, we think you are at the end of the road. Actually, you're not. I mean, you are at the crossroads of many subjects and third parties, because it's not only the end customer. Of course, it is essential for the end customer, but it is also the sellers and also the marketplace operators. So the three of them combine their interest for the fulfillment, for the last mile delivery.
Exactly that. It's true that the term last mile suggests that sort of it really is the last mile. I think in our definition, and I think in the definition that a lot of e-commerce use, it's everything up until and including the last mile, and therefore it's a subject which is in large part logistics related, but also very highly technical and very highly commercial as well.
Excellent. And myself, Jerome Radiguer, I'm the head of marketing with a long experience in the retail industry over the past 20 years, and now in the digital world for a few years. So before we move into this presentation, I'd like to introduce in a couple of slides the convenience and how the last mile experience serves the convenience in the interest of the end customer. If we have a quick look at the key successful or top successful companies over the past 2 decades, we observe two main characteristics from my point of view. The first one is they are all technology-based. They have state-of-the-art technologies capable to handle multiple flows and massive information. The second characteristics of these companies is that they are based on the vast ecosystem of third parties, partners, which unlocks new benefits for them. Uber doesn't have taxis or cars or drivers. Spotify doesn't produce the music. Airbnb, they don't own the houses, flats and rooms they rent, etc. So that's vast ecosystem of partners, and the new benefits are mostly these ones. The first one is they enlarge their value proposition because they offer much more than what a private company could offer to their customers if they was relying only on their own assets. Secondly, they drive customer engagement because they are extremely demanding in terms of services. They track, they control, they monitor everything, and they provide a high quality of service. They generate more revenues because it's not fully but essentially a flexible business model based on variable cost. And the last thing is they do externalize cost and complexity. Most of the assets but the technology are not owned by these companies, but by the third parties they're working with, bringing a lot of flexibility for these companies. If we now move to retail, the retail industry, we observed over the past 20 years that these retailers have been reshuffling the convenience. Of course, they did not invent convenience. Convenience always existed. I mean, when the hypermarkets were invented in the early 60s, I'm thinking of Carrefour, Walmart in 62, they brought everything under the same roof and they were inventing a new convenience. Times are changing, people have new expectations, technology brings new opportunities, and these retailers now redefine what is the convenience, the new convenience. Mostly there are 5 pillars that we consider define this convenience. The first one is the availability. It has to be available anywhere, at any time. You start your purchasing process in the morning, you continue during the day, and you might be delivered in the evening at your home or in a picking point. Extending choice. Some speak about unlimited choice. Yeah. There's a perception of unlimited, although infinite doesn't exist, but when you offer hundreds of thousands, millions of items, you have the feeling that it's unlimited. And for generalist or a specialized stores in a vertical, when you become the reference store, the reference website where whatever you need, you find it on this store, it is absolutely crucial for those companies and for the end customer which is looking for its products. The best price, of course, and even though you are operating a marketplace and you do not define the price because prices are made by the sellers themselves, still you can organize, orchestrate the competition across the sellers and make sure that your end customer benefit from the best price on your platform. The first one is the one that interests you, specifically Ben and our attendees this morning, the seamless delivery experience and returns, because it's not only about delivering the product in the best conditions, it is definitely, but also providing access to a service enabling the return in a warehouse or the seller's warehouse where necessary. Yeah. This is absolutely key, isn't it?
Absolutely, and we'll see that, depending on product category, depending on the geography they're operating in, the rate of return varies, but it's always something that customers need. And just to point out, logistics and fulfillment is of course the fourth pillar of these 5 things, and the one we're going to discuss today, but it has a sort of external impact on some of the other ones we've mentioned as well, notably best prices. I mean, there is the price of the goods themselves, the price of the product, but there's also the price of the delivery. And it's the sort of the sum of the two that the customer ultimately sees. And so actually, of course, we're going to focus on seamless delivery and returns, but there are some sort of external impacts in some of those other 4 pillars that good delivery quality can also impact. And we'll come on to that later.
Excellent. And of course, all these pillars or all this customer journey has to be zero friction, seamless. There are a lot of words to define that, but from the starting point to the last one, which is the delivery, the return, or even the after-sales services, it has to be zero friction for the end customer. So now, if we enter a little bit more into the details of the last mile experience, so how would you define this convenience in terms of logistics for the end customer?
Yeah, sure. And I think for the end customer, we've seen that the end customer has become more and more demanding over the last sort of decade. I saw a stat the other day saying something like 80% of end users in the US expect their delivery to be free and to occur within sort of 2 to 3 days, which is astonishing. There's no way that we would have sort of seen a statistic like that sort of 10 years ago. And that's just the US, but I think clearly it's something which is representative of all across the world. Ultimately, the sort of 3 things that that customers typically want is they want a delivery that's fast, low cost, and reliable. That's the sort of triumvirate, if you like, of delivery. And then outside of that, there's a ton of other stuff as well. We've put some of those things on the screen there. There's the options that they have. Over the course of the pandemic, we saw that the demand for pickup points was really depressed for a couple of years. Understandably, everyone was at home. Now it's something that's starting to pick up again, and people are becoming more and more demanding in terms of where and how they want to pick up their products. They also want to know exactly where it is all the time. Understandably, when you order something, you don't want to sort of have just radio silence for 3-4 days. You want to know exactly where it is, up to the sort of minute or hour of delivery. We spoke a little bit about multiple options already, and then finally, that final point, which we mentioned a second ago, was ease of returns. People will return maybe a few percent of every order they make. It depends a huge amount on geography. Germany is well known for a high return rate. Apparel is well known for a really high return rate as well. But no customer, when wants to receive a product, to open it, find it doesn't quite correspond to what they wanted, and then have to face a bureaucracy of sort of queuing up at the post office or La Poste or printing out stuff to do their returns. So those are some of the sort of key things, the drivers that customers are asking for, and therefore some of the things that sellers and marketplace operators are going to need to respond to.
And just maybe to highlight the point of returns, because most of the time people think that return means cost, additional cost, but actually it might be a trigger for customers to say, okay, if I can easily return my goods, I will buy rather than in another marketplace or website. If it's not that easy, I won't do the purchase.
It's exactly that, and especially if you think about apparel, you're looking at a pair of jeans. Notoriously difficult to know whether something's going to fit you until ultimately arrives at your house and you try it on. If the choice is between two sites, one of which says free returns, and the other one either doesn't mention returns or tells you that you're going to have to pay the postage and packaging yourself, it's a no-brainer that you're going to choose the first of the two. So yeah, it's really a key decision factor.
Excellent. So we already mentioned a couple of figures about this whole process and why it is so essential. Maybe two more figures to stress the importance of the last mile delivery experience. Here we have on the left-hand side, 40% of the customers say they will never purchase with the website again after having a bad delivery experience. Yeah. Somehow it means that even though you start a new activity, marketplace activity or website, you have to be at the level of the best websites of the leaders since the very beginning, don't you?
It's a really good point, because what this stat clearly means, and we've got two others, 60% of people could find the same product elsewhere and might go there as well. I think what we're seeing is that for a long time, sort of maybe when there was a bit less competition in the market, things like logistics, delivery, fulfillment, we'll come on to fulfillment in a second, these were kind of the dirty words of e-commerce. It was the sort of the unsexy stuff that no one really wanted to think about. It was a necessary evil. Now, as consumers are having more and more choice between different sort of vertical marketplaces, different sales channels, we're seeing it become a real strategic differentiator and a real sort of key purchasing factor as well. And it's a great point you raise about sort of, okay, well that's all very well, but what does it mean for someone starting their marketplace? How on earth do they get to the same level of sort of delivery quality as an incumbent, as an established marketplace, noting that if you try and build these warehouses, you try and build your delivery software, it's a huge amount of capital that needs to be deployed and can take a significant amount of time. And we'll come on to in a moment how some of the ways that you can sort of jumpstart that process and get very quickly to the level of quality that puts you on a par with incumbents in the market.
Yeah, we come back to one of the points I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, where you have to externalize, outsource as much as possible cost and complexity, and exactly. Logistics is part of this complexity, but today there are solutions to externalize, exactly. and Octopia is one of them, but of course we will enter more into the details of what Octopia offers to marketplace operators. So what are these options for a marketplace?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, by this point, I'm hoping that we've demonstrated a little bit the importance of delivery. If you're running a marketplace, then for me, you kind of have three options. The first one is to say, well, okay, we know this is important, but we're just not at the point yet where we want to invest in this, so we're just going to allow our sellers to do their own thing. It's the kind of laissez-faire approach. And a lot of sort of recently started marketplaces or sales channels will employ this approach simply because it's a complex subject. They've got enough on their hands just sort of building and commercializing the marketplace, building the vendor base, getting sort of both sides of the marketplace to the level which is going to make it move. So that's what a lot of people do to start with. The risk, though, is that you will have a huge degree of variability in terms of the quality of delivery which is provided by the vendors or the sellers. We say vendors, it can be sellers, merchants, e-commerce, and it's all kind of the same thing. And so your customers are going to have a huge variability of customer experience as well, which is going to affect those sort of statistics that we said earlier on, like, for example, repeat purchases, like Net Promoter Score. So option one, a lot of people do it just because they don't necessarily have the capacity to invest in logistics or fulfillment, but it's quite high risk. The second one then is the obvious sort of other option, which is to say, right, we know this is important. We can't afford to take the risk of allowing all of our sellers to do their own thing because it's going to be highly variable. So we're going to build our own sort of logistics or fulfillment or delivery entity. You might say...
But it's a massive investment, isn't it?
It's big, yeah, exactly. Because it's not only... I mean, if you think about a logistics or fulfillment center, big warehouse, big depending on the size of your marketplace, but it's probably going to be quite big. Big transport contracts. And also, we often think of this as a very sort of concrete business, the business of logistics and fulfillment. But as I mentioned at the beginning, a huge amount of tech that sort of has to go on to ensure that orders naturally flow into a warehouse, that people can track stuff. So there's a big investment just in the software necessary to make all of that function and to allow your vendors access to the warehouses. So it's a good option if you're in it for the long term and you have the capital available to deploy and also you have the expertise to do it, it might be an option, but very capital intensive, very long lead time to effectiveness, and to be honest, requires quite a degree of understanding and experience already.
So there's a third solution, third way.
Of course, there's a third way, exactly. And it's basically just the second option, but you rely on someone else who's already done that, who already has the warehouse network and the transport contract network, who already has the software necessary to allow vendors to access that network, and who can partner with you to put that in place, but also partner with you to best optimize it to boost the marketplace in the sense of making sure that the quality is to the right level and therefore ensuring that your customers are having a seamless experience and coming back and making repeat purchases. So option 3 is the one where you sort of just say, well, hey, look, we know it's complex, we know it's expensive, we're going to outsource it to someone who knows what they're doing to bring us up to the level we need to be to compete within the market.
So of course the option 3 appears to be the best one. Optimize cost, so there's already volume, so
Yeah.
probably this partner ships a lot of parcels on a daily basis,
Yeah.
so they have very competitive cost or prices with the third-party logistics.
Yeah.
They have the know-how, they have the technology, etc. Nonetheless, is it possible to have a mix of these options? Because
Yeah.
100% of the sellers going through fulfillment, is that really possible?
So it's definitely possible to have a mix between these options, and I've sort of oversimplified it a little bit on this page. For example, there are some actors who are maybe already running a marketplace, and on their sales channel, they also sell their first-party stock. A lot of those actors will have warehouses that handle their first-party stock, for example. And so actually for them, the investment is slightly less because they already have the warehouse, they already have the transport contracts. What they're missing is just the software, which allows sellers to access the warehouse, to access the transport contracts. And so that's a sort of a hybrid model between the options 2 and 3. That's another thing where, working with a fulfillment or a logistics player can help just bridge that gap. They can give the sellers of that marketplace access to the software, and it's connected actually to the warehouses owned by the marketplace anyway. So that's a sort of hybrid option. There definitely are hybrid options within these as well. It's true. We've sort of oversimplified a little bit here, but...
So we've been talking a lot about fulfillment, but the question is, could we share a definition of what is exactly fulfillment? Because I'm not sure it is 100% shared with all the attendees, and maybe on the market there are different definitions. So what is fulfillment?
Good question. And I have to know this because it's my job title, so if I don't, then I'm a bit of a fool. And we also have a lot of debate, for people in the audience, we also have a lot of debate about how many F's and L's there are in the word fulfillment as well. We'll keep it simple, we use the American definition. To answer your question, take it back to basics. If you go back to, I don't know, the Oxford English Dictionary and you look up fulfillment, it will say the satisfaction of a need, the satisfaction of a demand. When we put that in a sort of an e-commerce context, for me that means everything that has to happen between the moment a customer clicks order on a front end of a marketplace or a sales channel, and the moment where they receive something with which they are satisfied. And that last point is important because if you just said that fulfillment was everything between clicking order and receiving a parcel, it misses the whole point about whether that experience of receiving the parcel and opening it and finding that the product suits, whether the customer has been satisfied by that, and whether they're going to come back. It's also, it's the only sort of concrete physical interaction that an end user has with the vendor or the marketplace as well. So it's a crucial driver in things like Net Promoter Score. And yeah, so there you go. Fulfillment, for me, it's that whole process. It includes warehouses, it includes lorries driving up and down or trains traveling around with parcels in them. But it also includes all of the sort of tech that stitches all of that together, but also the sort of human accompaniment with the marketplace and the vendor to make sure it all works smoothly.
So I understand it's a broad subject. Let me maybe try to put this in a nutshell. So you operate on behalf of the sellers, the logistics, starting by warehousing, till the very last mile delivery, being either home delivery or pick-up point, and you address all the cycle on behalf of the sellers. And maybe also on behalf of the marketplace operator in this case.
It's exactly that. And we put a simple sort of diagram on the page there, which sort of shows that the way it works is that the seller will put the order, an end customer will make an order on a marketplace, on a front end, to the seller. And then behind the scenes, there is a fulfillment provider who takes care of everything that needs to happen to make sure the order gets to the end customer. That's the sort of basic idea of what a fulfillment provider does versus what a marketplace can do. And of course, the marketplace can also be its own fulfillment provider. There's plenty of examples of that as well.
So we see on the screen the different stages of this fulfillment, starting by the storage. So you receive the goods in the warehouse. The one, when I'm saying the one, how many warehouses do you have today?
So we've got a whole network of warehouses today. Very strong in France, recently opened in Spain, but that's exactly it. And what we've put on the screen here is how it works from the perspective of a seller, for a perspective of a vendor on a sales channel. So just to run through the sort of steps, that the first thing that will happen is after a seller has onboarded, they will send their stock to the warehouse of the fulfillment provider. The next thing they will do is they will sort of connect their boutiques or their sales channels to that fulfillment provider. It's a very, very simple process. And then as soon as an order comes in on whatever the sales channel is or the marketplace, that information flows automatically down into the warehouse. The warehouse staff, or if it's automated, it'll be warehouse robots, will pick the relevant products, they'll pack them, and they'll hand them off to a transporter, part of a portfolio of transport contracts, who will do the last mile delivery to the end customer. So the vendor, after the point of sending the stock in, and connecting the fulfillment provider to their boutique, doesn't have to do anything. They can just track all of the deliveries flowing out, and obviously the final point we've put on here is returns. So that's a good fulfillment provider should be able to handle returns back into the warehouse. Anything that a customer has said, it's not quite what I expected, then that should come back to the warehouse, and the fulfillment provider will put that back in the stock of a vendor, either ready to be resold again, or if for whatever reason it's broken or unsellable, they will arrange with the vendor to send that stock back to the vendor.
So we already mentioned some of the key advantages, but I see a couple of more. I mean, of course, externalization of the or outsourcing of the complexity. Also, the level of stock is somehow optimized, no, or at least better controlled, because the challenge sometimes is to know exactly if this product available or not, and there's also a question of customer satisfaction when it comes to being delivered and say, oh, sorry, your item is no longer available.
Yeah, exactly that. And you know, I won't dive in too much of the technical detail, but underpinning all of this is a whole sort of selection of APIs which do the automatic connection between the warehouses, the marketplace, and the seller. So there's tons of information flowing, you know, every millisecond between the warehouses and the front end. So stock information is automatically updated. Order information flows down into warehouses at the moment of order, and all of that, as you say, allows the vendor and the marketplace to have a very fine view over exactly what's in stock at any moment in time, and to update that on the front end of a marketplace.
So stock optimization, cost optimization, because when you rely on the third party with already existing volumes and massive volumes, I don't know if you can share an idea of how many parcels you send either on a monthly, yearly basis. What is the volume today at Octopia?
So it's millions per year, and our peak day is in the region of sort of 200,000 parcels dispatched.
200,000 parcels sent the same day to end customers.
That's it.
Okay.
Which means that it's actually, as you say, the whole beauty of this sort of business model is that we aggregate the volumes of hundreds or even thousands of sellers. Because we do that, it allows two things. A, we can handle huge sort of increases in demand, and when it comes to, for example, the shopping season, Black Friday, or even this week, January sales, which started sort of 5 days ago now, it's absolutely no problem. And what you see is zero dip in the KPIs that we track in terms of logistics performance and quality of delivery. It's quite impressive, actually, that there's literally no dip in those over the course of Black Friday, shopping season, January sales, which is something that is big benefit for a seller who on their own might be really struggling to achieve the same sort of speed and quality of delivery over those periods.
So whatever the marketplace or website working with you, they have the quality of a leader.
Exactly that.
Last mile delivery. And you mentioned just before the excellent KPIs you have. Could you share, for instance, I know you have, what is this one? The delivery rate, for instance, this one is critical, isn't it?
There's loads. One that we put a lot of emphasis on is what we call the sort of the quality of service within the promise. So it doesn't necessarily mean how quickly we got the parcel to someone. It's the percentage of time that parcel arrives on time and in full relative to what the end customer was told. And that we're sort of, you know, we track consistently online, slightly above the market, and you're talking in the region of sort of 97 to 99%, which is strong.
Yeah, which is excellent. That's impressive. Okay, so we understand now how it works. So what are the benefits? Because as I said in the introduction, there are three parties: the marketplace operator, the seller, and of course the end customer. And we talk here about a win-win scenario. How these three parties can have an interest in this service?
It's a great question. And you know, we say in English, there's no such thing as a free lunch. But in this case, one of the beauty of the business model is that it actually is not only a win-win scenario, but a win-win-win scenario in that everyone benefits, whether it's the end customer, the sellers, or the marketplace. The reason it works is because it's a huge economy of scale play. It comes back to some really sort of classical economic ideas. We basically aggregate the volumes of hundreds of individual users who in themselves wouldn't have access to that economy of scale. We're able to use huge, highly automated, very efficient warehouses and huge transport contracts. And so for the perspective of a seller, they get a better quality of service for a lower cost than they would get otherwise. From the perspective of an operator like a marketplace, they get that high quality of service, which if they left all the vendors to their own devices, they wouldn't have got. They also get the benefit that comes with the vendors being able to access a higher margin or to readjust their prices. And then finally, the end customer also gets a higher quality of service and is more likely to make repeat purchases and to come back more. So it really is a virtuous circle where value is created and shared evenly between all of those actors. And of course, the fulfillment provider as well is able to take a little bit of value from that and to pass most of it on to the vendors.
So there's a lot of information on this chart, and maybe we shouldn't enter into all the details, but if I take, for instance, the first line, I see competitive delivery cost. So we understood that indeed, based on the massive volumes you already have, you're very competitive in terms of preparation, warehousing preparation, and the shipment of the parcels. So for the seller, it's a reduced cost because they will never access such competitive prices if they were negotiating themselves directly with the third-party logistics and the transport companies. And for operator, I see zero logistic cost. How's that possible? There's no cost.
Well, in the sense that if you're a marketplace operator, in the sense that the costs are borne by the vendors as they were before, so you're not, well, you can choose to. If you want to subsidize the cost of the delivery, you can, but it's a choice you make. It's not obligatory. And so for each delivery, the vendor will bear the cost as they did beforehand, but it'll be probably less for them for a higher quality of service because of the economies of scale we've mentioned. One strategy that we see certain operators doing is to say, hey, look, we want to boost the uptake of fulfillment, and so it can be no cost for us, but actually we're going to choose to subsidize it to make sure that more of our vendors are using our integrated fulfillment service, to also allow vendors to sell more, to have more repeat purchases. And so it's an investment in terms of marketplace performance that they choose to make, but it's not obligatory. But a lot of people do it in order to, because they see that there's a return on investment in terms of the boost in the GMV of the marketplace, driven by repeat purchases and driven by improved NPS.
So we'll come on these growth drivers that represent fulfillment and overall the last mile delivery. Just maybe a last focus on this line: support for customer, outsource complexity for sellers. We already mentioned that, but maybe stress again that point, and enhanced overall customer experience for the operator. Again, it's a win-win-win scenario. How can you, first of all, why support for the customer? Why it is so important when you use these fulfillment services?
Yeah, it's a good question. And then there's probably two elements. There's support for the end customer and support for the vendor, and thirdly, support for the marketplace as well. Support for the end customer clearly vital, as well as providing up-to-date tracking information. The customer, if they're likely to sort of be satisfied with their fulfillment experience, they will need to feel that they're well supported. And sometimes things go wrong. It's very rare. But in those cases, it's important that they're able to easily speak to the vendor. By the way, this is all sort of what we would say white label. So the fulfillment provider is in the background. But one thing a good fulfillment provider will do is help the vendor with their customer relationship management. It's possible, for example, depending on how you integrate with a marketplace, to link the fulfillment flow with the flow of sort of customer requests, so that actually you can even the vendor can even outsource the treatment of their customer relationship management.
Because I'm sorry if I interrupt you, but this is so important. Most of customer requests are last mile delivery questions. Actually, they're asking for where is my parcel? Is it late or not? Can I change the? I was expecting to have it home delivery, but now I want to go to a picking point, etc. So reschedule,
Exactly. So the first level of support for that is making available to the vendor or the seller and the marketplace all of the information that they need in order to answer those sort of questions. And that, of course, with all of those sort of suites of APIs that I mentioned a second ago, the vendor has access to up-to-the-minute information about the purchase, about the tracking, and is very well positioned to answer those sort of questions. The second option, which is slightly more sophisticated, is to link the customer support questioning to the fulfillment flow, so that actually we can even respond on behalf of a vendor. Again, white label, they don't know that it's us, but can respond even more quickly and with even more accuracy to those questions.
Very good. So we said optimization of cost, etc. But also, fulfillment is a strategic growth driver. And you just mentioned before the terms repeat purchase, conversion rate. How does it work? What is the impact on the customers' behavior?
It comes back to what we said at the beginning, in the sense that a good fulfillment or good logistics experience is a big driver of repeat purchasing and NPS. That's self-evident. If you've received something, the process was smooth, you had plenty of options, the price was competitive, you're far more likely to go back to the original sales channel. And of course, clearly those two things are going to boost the sales volume of an individual seller, not just an individual seller, but also cumulatively the marketplace as a whole. And there's certain things a marketplace can do to start playing with that. For example, sellers who have a good fulfillment performance, or who are in fulfillment or are using a fulfillment provider, as a marketplace operator, you can choose to boost them in the search ranking. You might choose to give them access to, for example, a buy box, if you have a buy box on your marketplace. And those things, again, just reinforce that virtuous circle. If someone is using a good fulfillment provider, they will be providing a good service to customers. Customers are more likely to come back. You're likely to get more customers because of the boost in the NPS. And so you reward that fulfillment provider by giving them a better treatment in the search ranking, a better positioning on the marketplace. So there's all sorts of levers like that a marketplace can play with. And actually, it's up to a good fulfillment provider not just to do the sort of basics of fulfillment, to run the warehouses, make sure stuff is delivered on time, but also to advise the marketplace operator on how to put those sort of levers in place to really get the maximum benefit out of fulfillment.
Excellent. So it has a two-sides effect. On one side, for the end customer, purchasing more and repeating purchases, and on the other side, optimization of the cost and the externalization of the complexity. Again, here we have this slide. What should you look for fulfillment partners? So what are the key topics, information points you should look at when you decide to go for fulfillment?
For me, there's the kind of the absolute fundamentals which you need, and we've put a few of those on the screen, which are things like, your fulfillment provider has to have a good network of warehouses. I think, for example, we've got 600,000 square meters or so. They have to have access to good transport contracts. They have to be able to have a connected technical solution which allows you to do that sort of tracking that we mentioned, all that sort of stuff, and multiple options for delivery. All of that is the fundamentals. You can't call yourself a fulfillment provider if you don't have those sort of things. Beyond that, though, I think there's maybe two things which are worth mentioning. Firstly, if you're a seller, if you're a vendor, you have to choose someone who you can contact easily and who is there on hand with a high degree of human support. It's a big step for a vendor as they grow. Beforehand, they've been handling all of this stuff themselves. Maybe they're stocking in their own sort of warehouse or in their garage even. The moment where you say, okay, I'm going to hand all of my stock to someone who I've not met, to a warehouse I've maybe not visited, although to be clear, our vendors are very welcome to visit our warehouses, but it's understandable that a lot of them aren't going to. It's a big step. And so what you should look for in a fulfillment partner is someone who accompanies you very closely through that process, who is on hand to handle any questions you might have. That's a really important one. And I think that's something we're very proud of. We have a very, very high quality support and commercial team who help our vendors with that process, but also helps them navigate some of the tricky parts of the year, how to prepare for the shopping season, all that sort of stuff. So that's a big one, sort of human support and accompaniment. And the second one, which is more if you're, for example, an operator or a marketplace, it's finding someone who also gives you that level of accompaniment, but someone who has experience in not just providing fulfillment, but actually running a marketplace with fulfillment integrated. And there's not many players who can say that they've done that. It comes back to those things we mentioned a second ago in terms of putting in place the real commercial drivers to boost the marketplace GMV aided by fulfillment. That's the real sort of value add, I think.
So that's really important, this point that you are stressing, the fact that we're not only a fulfillment operator, of course, much more than that. Octopia provides the technology, gives access to catalog of sellers. We have 15,000 sellers now available in our catalog. The fulfillment, but before that, we were a marketplace operator. So we know exactly how to operate a marketplace, what are the expectations of the market, etc. And
exactly that.
We've been years shipping parcels on behalf of our sellers. So that's a long experience. It's not only Octopia over the past couple of years, but it's been now 10 years of experience in the marketplace industry.
Exactly that.
There you go. So we arrive at the end of this presentation. Maybe a few key figures to summarize the offer of Octopia in terms of fulfillment and last mile experience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've put on the screen some of our sort of, impressive stats, 600,000 square meters of warehouse space across Europe. So we obviously started out in France. We have launched a warehouse in Spain in the last few months, which is going very well. We're very competitively positioned, so we're very happy with that. And then later this year, more to come elsewhere in Europe, notably UK and Germany, and then beyond that, these are the sort of first steps of the construction of a warehouse network across Europe, which will help us with vendors and end customers anywhere. So that's a big thing for us.
How many countries are you delivering today or capable to deliver today?
Yeah, it's true, because I've mentioned there the countries where we have warehouses, i.e. where vendors are able to stock. But that's just one part of the puzzle. We also have all of the countries that we're able to send parcels to. Over 20 countries across Europe currently, and with competitive rates across that. So just the fact that we're only stocking in France, Spain for now, doesn't necessarily mean that we're not able to deliver extremely competitively to all sorts of countries across Europe.
Okay, we already mentioned the delivery rate, 99.7% of orders delivered on time. This is simply impressive. The long-term experience, 10 years in the marketplace, 20 years in e-commerce. Of course, we offer the real-time tracking for all the parcels. We always know precisely where they are, either on time or not, challenging the transport companies. Multiple delivery solution. We mentioned the picking point. We mentioned home delivery. We have same day, express, day plus one, day plus two. I don't know how many options we have. And a large network of partners. We are already connected to most, or at least all, the biggest carriers in Europe.
That's right, and we're always optimizing that portfolio of carriers as well, so that our vendors and end users get the best experience. So,
Very good. So thank you very much, Ben, for all this information you shared with us. We arrive now at the end of this presentation, and maybe we have a couple of questions which we could answer now. I'm just looking at the...
Thank you very much for this presentation. We got indeed a few questions. So the first one is, what are the latest trends in what end customers are asking for?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've covered it a little bit already, I think. So that clearly there's the sort of three main things. People always want a fast, inexpensive, reliable delivery. I think that's not likely to change even on a sort of 10-year horizon. One thing that's come up a lot recently, which I think is a real trend in the coming years, is increasing demand for sustainability, or a reassurance that what they've bought is going to have a minimal impact on the environment. And it's a really important one, because if you think about sort of e-commerce, logistics, or fulfillment, we're not good for the environment. It is still a lot of lorries driving around the motorway. And increasingly, end customers are more and more alive to that. No one wants to open a parcel, for example, and see that there's tons of white space in there, that the unnecessary amount of packaging has been used, which then has to be thrown away or recycled. So that's a big one. And you see a lot of fulfillment providers now starting to talk about initiatives that they've taken to try and combat that. On our side, we work a lot with our logistics providers and transporters to make sure that we have, for example, in certain cases, fleets of electric vehicles for delivery, in certain cases, use of trains where it's possible for sort of long distance rather than lorries. And also had to have initiatives, like sort of carbon impact and storage, working with sort of tree planting, that sort of thing. So we do all of that.
I heard also that we have this 3D packing matching
Yeah.
that reduces the volume. It adjusts exactly the quantity of carton to the item or the items if you have several items in the same parcel.
That's right.
And the impact is huge. No, it's like 30% of space reduction.
That's right.
Correct. Yeah.
It's really impressive actually when you see it, because it will literally pack the product to sort of within a few millimeters of the dimensions of the product. Whereas if you were to sort of do it by hand, you'd have a good chunk of sort of white space that needs to be filled with packaging material, that sort of stuff. Again, it's a win-win, right? Because we want that because it allows us to put more stuff in a single lorry. It allows us to be more efficient with the packaging material, so it reduces our costs. But it's also obviously great for the environment in the sense that you do get more stuff in a lorry. So there are fewer sort of lorry miles done for the average parcel, and also the end customer gets a parcel which clearly hasn't been sort of loads of packaging material wasted in order to package it. So that's a really nice example. A lot of these things are quite sort of anecdotic. How do you say in English? Anecdotal. A lot of things are a little bit anecdotal though, and I think one of the trends we're going to see in the industry is people moving towards more sort of fundamental or systematic ways to reassure their customers about carbon neutrality. For example, the sort of implementation of carbon neutral tariffs. A bit like when you book your airline flight, you might sort of click a box which says, I want to offset my carbon emissions. I think that's something we're going to see more and more of, and something that we're very interested in as well.
Maybe we have time for a second question.
We have indeed. Next one is, what makes Octopia better than the competition?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think for me, I think we covered it a little bit already. We have all of those fundamentals that you need to be a good sort of partner for a marketplace when it comes to logistics and fulfillment. So we have the physical assets. We've got a big warehouse network. We're improving it all the time. We've got the intangible assets, well, not intangible, but non-physical assets in the sense that we've got really good software, which has been based on years of experience in working with vendors and their fulfillment needs. So those points are key, and therefore we have good sort of quality of delivery and logistics KPIs are very good as well. All of that, I think, is our sort of core strengths. And then above and beyond that is probably what I mentioned a second ago, which is our ability to accompany both our vendors and marketplaces with a very human accompaniment. We've got our support teams are on site. They sit right next to our product, commercial and operations teams. So if there's the slightest problem, we're able to resolve it amongst ourselves extremely quickly. It's not the case for certain players. So that's a real strength of our offer, I think. And also, as we mentioned, the fact that we're not only a fulfillment player, but we also have a ton of other assets like the vendor base of Octopia, but also like our historic experience in running a marketplace as well, which I think is invaluable for someone starting their own marketplace. It's not something that a lot of other players can offer, I think.
So if I try to summarize,
yes.
State-of-the-art technology.
Yeah.
This fulfillment technology is unique. Long-term experience, more than 10 years now in the operations of a marketplace and fulfillment.
Yep.
Massive volumes already in place, millions of parcels on a yearly basis, up to 200,000 parcels a day. This is what you said before.
Yeah.
And the human touch, the human relation with our partners, being either marketplace operators or sellers. We have teams speaking with them on a daily basis. Yeah. They are followed, they are supported, accompanied to make sure that they succeed in the operations or the shipment of their parcels.
That's it.
Is that a good summary?
You put it much more concisely than I did. Absolutely, that's it.
Okay, very good. I think it's time to close this webinar. Thank you very much. That was super interesting, Ben. A lot of inputs. Of course, I say if you are interested in fulfillment or for marketplace solutions, feel free to contact us. You have the contact form on the website, and you will be put in touch directly with Ben or your team to the marketplace team if you're interested in the marketplace solution or whatever. Again, feel free to contact us. Thank you very much. Have a very nice day, and we will meet again for another webinar on different topics, being seller management, building a business plan, etc. We have a whole series of topics covered during this webinar. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jerome. Bye.